memories and recollections of some of the men from the Epstein files because I kind of figured, you know what? If I'm in there, however tangentially, let me talk about all the dudes I knew from those files. So we discussed Harvey Weinstein, Ari Emanuel. Geez, who else? It feels like so long ago, doesn't it? Every day feels like a year right now. It's badonkers. Yeah, Jay-Z and Steve Tisch. There's an update on Steve Tisch, the billionaire co-owner of the Giants, BT Dub, because the NFL has said they're going to be looking into these allegations. You know, Steve Tisch, who kept asking about the girls, whether they were of age, whether they were pro or not, and preferred Russians. So now the NFL is going to be looking into it. Now they've stopped short of saying there's going to be a investigation. I don't know why, but it actually could have big ramifications. So any of those who are into football, I am not that into football, but I do take notice. Anyone who's into football remembers that the Washington Commanders guy, let me read this, Dan Snyder, he ended up selling the Washington Commanders in 2003 following toxic workplace and sexual harassment, racial, like all this stuff. And also Jerry Richardson of the Carolina Panthers in 2008 had to sell after sexual harassment and racial slur allegations. So I can only imagine what's going to happen with Steve Tisch and the hooker allegations. I do want to point out though that he's part co-owner. So his family is co-owner with another person. And his family also includes Jessica Tisch, the NYPD chief, who is fabulous. Fabulous. John Tisch, his brother, who runs the Lowe's Corporation, who is amazing. I mean, Steve and John are kind of like Cain and Abel, two totally different people. And Steve is the pervy movie producer on the West Coast. So who knows? Listen, if the government's not going to do anything, and clearly there doesn't seem to be any investigation into the dudes, one woman, Ghislaine Maxwell, is in jail, as she should be. However, why are we not questioning these dudes, especially the emails about young girls and children? This is bonkers. How is it, on what planet that we live on, that the NFL is holding people to more accountability-ish with an with a looking into it, not an investigation, than the government? This is infuriating. All right, so this week I'm bringing you my stories about former Sony head Tommy Mottola, or Don Tommy, as he liked to call himself. You know, a lot of these guys in the 90s and 2000s revered the mafia and would always be like, yo, don't mess with me, that kind of crap. And Russell Simmons, or Wethel, he has a speech impediment, and Brett Ratner, the director of Melania's doc. So let's dig in. First of all, we got old Tommy Mottola from Sony. Now, Tommy, a lot of people remember him because he's Mariah Carey's ex-husband for a reason. We're going to dig deep on that because that's when I had my huge fight with El Tomo. So Tommy was apparently very good friends with Epstein, appeared 681 times in the files. At one point, he even had Epstein basically advising him on how to sell a house. So this is an email, and notice all these emails come after the fact that Epstein was a registered pedophile. All right. So there was an email on December 6, 2009, in which Epstein wrote Tommy, hold some parties. Art shows something. They're talking about a house Tommy wants to sell. It will be almost impossible to sell unfurnished like this. And Tommy emails back, I agree. Now, a lot of the other things in the files are call Tommy. Tommy's expecting your call. Don't forget to get in touch with Tommy. There's also some things on 2017, a year before Epstein was arrested again. Tommy Mottola is sending Bridgewater chocolate to J.E. Did it arrive? Or another one, a gift basket from Tommy Mottola to arrive around noon. Just an FYI. Now, it also seems that Tommy Epstein and Jean-Luc Brunel, who ran another modeling agency, ooh, my eyes tick on that one because some modeling agencies, some are legit, obviously, but a lot of littler modeling agencies basically just acted like a pipeline to predators. It was insane. And Jean-Luc Brunel ended up killing himself after he was finally charged with rape and trafficking. Anyway, Tommy, Jean-Luc, and Epstein were discussing uh, creating their own swimsuit issues with, I guess, Jean-Luc's girls. And to share pictures of the girls. It was amazing. They even went into how much money they could make, which is 2.5 million. Not that much for billionaires, but I mean, yeah, it's a lot for me and you, but not for these dudes. I think it was really just a cover up of like, hey, let's get with some models. So anyway, back in the day, I started Page Six December 15th of 2009. It was kind of a really easy slide in, if you will. It was right before the holiday season. No one really does anything until January 8th. So it was just an easy intro. And then I hit the ground running and a bunch of bombs blew up in my face. I got a really great story about Tommy Mottola and Mariah Carey. Now, Mariah and Tommy separated in 1996. You'll remember this. However, their divorce was finalized in 2000, and it was right before their divorce. And I believe the story was something about how he was terrorizing her and threatening her. And, he not only was her husband, he was her boss and her manager. So she was trying to get out of Sony just because really she thought he was an abusive husband, and you don't want to work with an abusive husband. Shocker. So I remember calling up and being like, hey, it's Paula Froelich from PTX. I'm calling for Tommy about this story. And I get a call from Tommy. And I'm going to do some cursing. I'm going to try to cover it all up. I'm just telling y'all verbatim what was said. All right. So he picks up, this is Tommy Mottola, who the F are you? And I was like, oh, Paula Froelich, I'm a new girl, blah, blah, blah. And apparently he had had a very tight relationship with the person who worked at Page Six before me, where they would share things. She would kind of kill stuff that wasn't good for him. And he was like, well, this isn't how it goes. I go, well, yeah, I mean, it's a good story. Do you have a comment? This is what I got, blah, blah, doing the reportorial thing. And he was like, who the F do you effing think you are? You're nobody. You effing hear me? You're nobody. Screaming so loud that people I work with are looking over and I'm like, whoa. And he goes, you think you're so effing big right now. You see who talks to you when you don't have this effing job. And I finally had it. I mean, this has been like 10 minutes of screaming, wheeling, dealing. Didn't you talk to Bling Blong, the person before me? They know me. And I was like, ugh. So I finally looked at him once he said, you're nobody and no one's going to talk to you after. I went, you know what, buddy? And he goes, what? I go, F you. And he goes, what'd you say? I said, you heard me. F you. I had friends long before this, and I will have friends long after this because I understand who my friends are. And he goes, well, okay, freaked out. And I was like, F you, and slammed down the phone. We didn't really talk much after that, as you will. But, I was like, who is this nutbag? And what is his damn problem? But you guys have to understand, at the time, he was God to the music industry. People, if you pissed him off in the music industry, you never worked again. And Mariah, God bless her. I mean, that woman deserves a Purple Heart for what she went through with him. So she got married to him in 1993. They say they met when she was 20. We'll get into that as well later. And later, she actually was brave enough to give interviews and say that she called herself his child bride. She also said he was abusive, called their house in Bedford a prison because he had her followed. He had private guards who followed her to the bathroom. I mean, what are you gonna do in a bathroom? And why does she need to be guarded in a bathroom? It was really a source of listening and just intimidation, right? Now, meanwhile, some really serious shit went down, and I remember we got into more fights because Mariah then finally left Sony, and she got out of it, and she was picked up by Virgin America, which was making a huge inroad into the United States. So Virgin gave her an unheard of $40 million contract, and she was going to do this huge debut. Now, I don't know if y'all remember this, but there was a movie called Glitter. There was an album called Glitter. And this was going to be her big F you to Tommy. And Tommy got to her first. So this is insane. Let me go down. Let me go down. I remember in the rap, there used to be a rap magazine, XXL, and Irv Gotti, who worked on this album with Mariah, got a call from Tommy Mottola, and he basically stole her tracks and handed them to Jennifer Lopez, his new young thing. This is when Jennifer was starting out, right? She became J-Lo, all that stuff. And she also, Mariah, had a song with Ja Rule as well. Scooped up, shoved it to Jennifer, and then in the ultimate FU, put Jennifer's album. Let me get it was crazy. Yeah. I can't, you guys. It's so bad. Had Jennifer's album come out 2 weeks before Mariah's Glitter album was supposed to come out. Therefore, Mariah basically was like, she was screwed, man. She couldn't do anything. She had to go back to the drawing board. Ended up coming out with an album that was released 2 weeks before September 11th, and it bombed. And it bombed so badly, Virgin released her from her contract, paid her out, and she was, for the first and only time in her life, an independent artist. Now, karma is a you know what. Jennifer just pretended like none of this happened. Like she just wasn't handed the two major tracks off of her album. And she then, oh God, she then went on the whole thing like, I don't know why Mariah doesn't like me. Mariah is now like, I don't know her, and can throw some serious shade as she would. But listen, people were terrified of Tommy. When people in the newsroom heard me screaming at Tommy because he was screaming at me, they were like, yo, I don't know if you should mess with him. And in the Vanity Fair piece and in subsequent pieces, Tommy had shown his utter control over Mariah. So Vanity Fair piece, they said, can we talk to Mariah? He goes, no, she won't be talking. It's not good for her or for me or the brand. But she won't be talking. It's not good for her. I think you know what I'm saying. He also thought of himself a mafia-like character and called himself Don Tommy. And answer me this. Why did the CEO of a gazillion-dollar company have a 9mm Glock in his briefcase and travel in an armor-plated limo? It was insane. I get that the music industry was a little rough and tumble back then, but I think that this guy really wanted to be seen as a mafia-like character, but he also liked to threaten people and would. Turns out he was also a good friend of Epstein's. I don't know who's shocked more, nobody or nobody. It's insane. I don't understand it. Anyway, in another music industry guy, now Russell Simmons, who has the speech impediment, Wuthel, God bless him. Russell always liked him young. He really always liked young girls. Sure did. In fact, he had chased after a young model around 18 named Tyra Banks. For a long time, Tyra wouldn't do it. Then he set eyes on her younger friend by 2 years, Kimora Lee Simmons. And we know this because there was a Vanity Fair article on Kimora, who claims that they met when hold on, here we go. I gotta go through this because I don't really want to be sued. Yeah, this is before all of his rape allegations and whatnot with Kimora. She said she met him in New York when she was 16 or 17. She was 16. She was a high school sophomore. He was 32. Now, she also claimed that they didn't do anything until she was 18. But yeah, it's when she was a child walking the runway, Russell picked her up and they became an item. They later got married. I met them in 2000 again at Mr. Chow. I was invited to this dinner. It was by this girl, Alicia. We won't get into it. And she said, come meet Russell and Kimora. Kimora is starting Baby Fat, and she's going to start this new line, and she's really excited. And we go into Mr. Chow in Midtown, and anyone who's ever been there, there are the two banquettes up top by the bar, and then there's the dining room downstairs. And we were in one of the banquettes, and I sit down, and Kimora was lovely. She had not turned into Kimora Lee Simmons, bump Baby Fat yet. And she sits down, or I sit down, they were all there. I was a little late, and she goes, I'm really glad you're here. I don't get to hang out with many people my age. And I just went, wait, what? Oh, she was his doll that he brought around. She was his trophy. She had to hang out with men who were much older, women who were much older. And she was lovely. She didn't really speak much. She wasn't really allowed to. And I always had a soft spot in my heart for Kimora, despite behavior in later years, because that's got to be rough, man. You're a model since you were 12. You're basically out of the house, not really under parental supervision. And you got a lot of guys who are really a lot older than you. So this is where, funnily enough, Russell appears in the Epstein files courtesy of Deepak Chopra. Yeah, Oprah's spiritual guru. I mean, at this point, is there a pedo creep that Oprah doesn't freaking love? You know, it's insane. So Deepak Chopra sent Jeffrey Epstein an email saying, you know, it's about a plan to hang out. He goes, perfect, we can hang out. I'll be in New York City after I have an event with Russell Simmons, I think, but I will check. And then there's, you know, but Russell didn't really hang out with Epstein again because Epstein was, as we now know, an insane racist and didn't really like Black people. So Russell's pretty tangentially, but I was like, yeah, this all fits though. Russell liked him young. So young that years later, after he and Kimora had broken up, I ran into him, I think it was around 2006, 2000, I want to say 2006, Art Basel, 2007. And he was with a model called Portia. And I was waiting in line. There used to be this Walgreens in South Beach, down by the Ritz-Carlton. It wasn't the Ritz-Carlton yet, but you know, if you know South Beach, you know the one. It's not there anymore. And I was waiting in line. I think I had forgotten toothpaste. And I'm in line behind Russell and this woman. He goes, oh, hey, Paula. And I was like, hey, Russell. He goes, meet my girlfriend, Portia. She's legal. We can prove it. And I was like, wait, what? Why are you telling me this? This is insane. She's legal. And I was like, to drink alcohol or what? Now, I'm assuming it wasn't to drink alcohol because she turned out she was 20. But I'm glad she was legal for everything else. You know, years later, 2017, Russell gets slammed with 10 allegations of sexual assault, rape, harassment. The New York Times, LA Times published the accounts that happened between 1980s through 2014. Russell Simmons has always denied it. However, he did soon flee to Bali after, where he still maintains a home. However, he does still go back and forth. unobstructed because why bother, right? Why bother holding anyone to an account? And speaking of Oprah, there was an actual documentary being done on Russell, and it included the sex crimes allegations where women went on the record, showed their faces, and Oprah pulled support. And it was never shown. At the time, she says it needs more investigation, or I don't know, these claims don't stand up. But what doesn't stand up when a woman who's willing to put her face, her name, and has the receipts saying, he attacked me? How does that not stand up? I'm pretty sure it does, except for that's her BFF. I might do another video on Oprah later in the week, BT Dub, because she's super problematic to me. And it ain't just Russell. It ain't just Deepak. It ain't just Dr. Oz or Dr. Phil. It's a lot of things. Anyway, in 2004, boys Flexner filed 2 lawsuits against Russell Simmons. So this is just a year and a half ago. They filed another lawsuit against Russell for sexual battery and assault and inflicting emotional distress and false imprisonment. Drew Dixon, a former, I have to read this because I really don't want to get sued. They filed it against a former music executive, Drew Dixon, who sued him for defamation, and details the background and underlying abuse and harassment Drew Dixon included in her career, including being attacked and sexually assaulted by Russell Simmons when she worked at Def Jam. That's all I'm going to say about that. So Russell keeps going back and forth. Of course, he's slippery because nobody wants to get served with a subpoena because, you know, if you can't get him criminally, people are trying to go after you civilly, and he certainly don't want that. So, hey there, Russell. Let us know where you're going to show up next. Sure, the process servers would love to know. Then we get on to Brett Ratner. I used to call him the Monchichi of the monkey of the movie industry. I mean, Hollywood is kind of a monkey movie industry, but he did kind of look like a Monchichi. If you're a person of a certain age, it's those little like monkey type dolls who used to stick their thumb in their mouth, and the song went Monchichi, Monchichi, oh so soft and cuddly with a thumb in its mouth. It's really neat, Monchichi, Monchichi. I'm sure you don't want to hear my singing, but yeah, Brett was called the Monchichi of the movie industry. God bless him. And, you know, again, I worked at page 699 to 2009. We heard all sorts of things about kind of, you know, nobody really wanted to work with him. We heard that Rebecca Romaine Stamos in the X-Men movie was just appalled by him. And remember, Rebecca Romaine had to wear that blue body-fitting costume where she had to go naked and have the rubber cover and then fit it, which is fine unless you've got a director who creeps you out. You know, she's later come out and talked about it, but we were hearing all this stuff. And, you know, a lot of it, as a lot with the Epstein guys, or people who were mentioned in the Epstein files, because Epstein was mentioned. And yes, photos of him with young girls and their faces blacked out. He's like, that was my girlfriend at the time, or that was my fiance at the time. Okay. But still friends, still in that circle, still seeing what's going on. And you still kind of fit in a little bit, in my opinion. So Brett goes on, he's in Hollywood, he marries Rebecca Gayheart. They were childhood sweethearts, high school sweethearts, whatever, it didn't work out. And he had a hell of a reputation. So much so that he was actually canceled I believe it was 2017, when 6 women accused him of sexual harassment. And Natasha Henstridge, a famous actress, claimed she was watching a movie on Brett Ratner's couch when she fell asleep. She was a 19-year-old fashion model at the time. He was an up-and-coming music director in his early 20s. They had been hanging out in front of the TV with his friends in New York. When she woke up, the others had left. She was alone with Ratner. She got up to leave, Henschridt said, but he blocked the doorway with his body and wouldn't budge. He began touching himself, she said, and then forced her to perform oral sex. She said, he strong-armed me in a real way. He physically forced himself on me. And at some point, I gave in and he did his thing. Yeah. Rebecca Romaine has said about her time with him that she had two major issues with directors she worked with, one being Ratner, but noted she didn't feel the need to speak out publicly because they already got theirs. Yeah. Anyway, Brett had hell of a reputation. The Monchichi was all over. And we also, we called him the Randy director in Page Six, and that was fine. It was like Ratner, the Randy director, or Randy Ratner. And it was like, boys will be boys kind of thing. Yeah. But he's pretty interesting. So afterwards, what happened? He basically, it was yanked. He had to go back to Miami. No money's coming in. He leads an expensive life. But a year before Me Too, I go to a movie premiere. Now, I'm not even in the industry anymore, but I did doll up. I was like, I go to a movie premiere. My friend Chris is bringing me. I'm all excited. I'm like, this will be fun. And we sit down. I'm on the aisle. Chris is here, and Ratner's walking towards us. He's like, yo, Chris! Da-da-da. And then he looks at me and goes, whoa, who is this gorgeous babe? It was weird. It was like a record scratch. And I'm like, I'm Paula. And he was like, yeah, and he starts coming in and he's really close and he puts his arms on either side of the seat. He's like, wow, you are really gorgeous. Are you going to be at the after party? I'd love to hang out with you. And I was like, what? And then at one point I said, who are you? I knew who he was, but what the fuck? He doesn't, not even introducing himself. Then he puts his hand on me, my arm, and then kind of on my leg. And I said, oh, dude, do not touch me. Who the hell are you? And Chris leans over and goes, this is Paula Frolic. She used to work at Page Six. And it was kind of funny. It was like a freaking Roadrunner cartoon. There was just a shape of Brett Ratner left. Never saw him again. And once again, I have Page Six to thank for basically, again, protecting me from weirdos. Yeah. It's interesting. So Brett moves back to Miami. Nobody wants to hang out with him except for people in Florida, because people in Florida are, as we know, much more forgiving towards that kind of stuff. Ooh, gives me a tick in my eye, doesn't it? And he goes to Florida. He becomes friends with the Trumps. They got this idea for the doc for Melania. Apparently, according to my sources, he's actually living now for free at Mar-a-Lago in one of the Mar-a-Lago estates, and got a ton of money from Jeff Bezos, courtesy of Amazon. It's like something like 40 million for the doc, 35 million for the promotional of the doc. So 40 million, he definitely got at least 4 million, at least 10%. I would say probably closer to 25, 30%. So yeah, he back in the money. All's well that ends well with Florida, guys. Hey, it's amazing. I have more stories. I have another story. I'm not going to get into it this time, but a very big British PR guy, who was married to a billionaire, once tried to drug me. Oh, it was fun. Listen, all in all, I left Page Six for a reason. It was disheartening. At the end of the day, you see a lot of bad behavior. For the most part, you're not touched by it, but you have to witness it, and it curdles your soul a little bit, especially when it doesn't seem like karma's ever coming back around. And even when it does, with Me Too, a lot of these guys are up and at 'em again. They're under the thing of Me Too went too far. And yes, in some cases, it did. With the Epstein, no one's been investigated. No one's getting a knock on the door from the cops. And in fact, their names, a lot of them are still redacted, whereas the women, oops, we accidentally released their photos, their names, their addresses, their phone numbers, their emails. That's a big oops, but the guys, don't worry, they're still covered up. Meanwhile, I spoke to two of those women who used to be in Epstein's orbit and were, in fact, victims of Epstein. They're married, they're with kids. Nobody knows about their background, except for now they do. It's humiliating, it's horrible, it's bringing up some really bad stuff for them. So hold them in your thoughts right now, you know? And anyway, thanks you guys. Oh, listen, tomorrow at 5, I got a big one. I'm speaking to Michael Gross. He is the author of the book Model. And we're going to talk about how the modeling industry is basically a pipeline into the pedopervs. And it's an interesting underbelly. It looks it looks glamorous, it looks amazing. A lot of times it's not, especially when these kids are 12, 13, 14, showing up to model. And, a friend of mine who worked with me at Page Six told one of these smaller modeling agency guys, his name was Paolo Zampoli. He's also in the Epstein files, just FYI. Hey, I'm having a birthday party. And Zampoli was like, I fill it with lots of models for you. Next thing you know, a bunch of girls show up and they are not legal. I mean, their house mother showed up with them. And my coworker was like, yo, you guys got to leave. This is, wow, you have to get out of here. And kind of kicked them out. So, yeah, that's the industry we're talking about tomorrow at 5. I hope to see you then. I'm going to look through some of these. I don't know if anyone's got a question, but you are welcome to ask a question. Oh, I'm not seeing it. All right, guys. Leave some comments when this posts. It'll post in about, I don't know, 5 hot minutes. Thanks again. Take care. Oh.